Riley Sutherland, and this is Divided by Politics, United by Purpose. Anna Maria Lane and Elizabeth Murray. Begin. Good day. How do you do? I am almost finished repairing this shirt, although it appears I have quite the pile awaiting me. My name is Anna Maria Lane. I have been doing laundry for Washington's men since 1776. It was back in 75, and from each colony were called to arms to oppose the tyranny and taxation of the British Crown, including my husband, John. While our husbands suffered tragedies on the war front, we wives faced tragedies of our own on the home front. British soldiers were quartered in the homes of women and plundered their goods, violated them, even committed murder. Soldiers began requesting leave to return home and tend to their suffering families, but Washington could not afford to lose any men. Instead, he allowed hundreds of us wives to accompany the Continental Army. While our men are pursuing the enemy, we wives repair their shirts, we serve as laundresses and nurses, tend to livestock, all tasks vital to the survival of the army. In exchange, men give us portions of their rations, or sometimes portions of their pay. But Washington and his leadership felt the presence of us women was slowing progress on marches, going so far as calling pregnant women and those accompanied by children a clog to the army's progress. On August 4th of 77, he ordered his officers rid their ranks of any women deemed not absolutely necessary to the army. I was determined to continue with the army, so I kept a spare pair of worn breeches and a coat. After tying my hair back, I resemble a male soldier, so just weeks after the order was issued, I ran into battle alongside John at the Battle of Germantown. Washington's men suffered a defeat here, and it was not until conclusion of the conflict I noticed the canister shot lodged in my thigh. John helped me remove it to avoid detection, and I remained with the army as a nurse. Although I've suffered great injury and tragedy while following Washington's men, my service as a nurse, and even alongside the men as a soldier, has begun allowing me to take an immense sense of pride in my contributions to their struggle. Patriot women were not the only women organizing to support their side of the revolution. Loyalist women were equally determined to support their own side's fight to maintain traditional governance. You're not one of those rebels come to protest my British fabrics, are you? No? Good. My name is Elizabeth Murray, but Elizabeth will suffice. My early life in Britain was marked by tragedy as I was orphaned by the age of 12 and taken in by my eldest brother, James. James moved to North Carolina to establish himself in colonial trade, and in watching James become a businessman, I saw no reason I could not do the same. So I moved to Boston to establish a millinery. Owning and operating my own business has allowed me a new independence and new life, which I've triumphed in sharing with local women by financially supporting and mentoring them in the creation of their own businesses. My impact upon these women has begun to reciprocate throughout Boston, where nearly 100 women keep shop. After marrying, I continued to support the girls from Cambridge, where I was busy managing my husband's estate. But marriage did not mean an end to the economic position I created for myself. Rather, I preserved it with a prenuptial agreement. It states my husband neither shall nor will assume any power over my property. With this, I triumphed in becoming both a wife and business owner. But when Lexington and Concord shots were fired out against our king's men, my coward of a husband left me and fled to Boston, where he could be under the protection of loyalist troops, leaving me with his land. He asked me to join him, but at what expense? Losing our estate and crops to the rebels? No. I told the man he'd lost his senses and continued to defend our estate against rebel troop movements until they confiscated and held me as a prisoner. I managed to escape to the local countryside, but after experiencing the horrors of being held as a prisoner, I sought to help my husband's relative, Archibald Campbell, a King's soldier imprisoned in Cambridge, by selling him food and literature. But the newspapers found out and labeled me a prostitute and spy. I then attempted to seek refuge by returning home to Britain, but was taken ill before the journey and will likely die in this unforgiving land. But I cannot consider myself a failure when I recollect the spirit of independence with which I defended my own estate and the determination with which I've allowed local women to triumph by assuming economic responsibility of their own. Ultimately, Elizabeth Murray's personal financial endeavors were devastated when her business was confiscated, and she died just outside of Boston. But her emphasis upon women in business laid a foundation for women who fought for property rights after the Revolution. Meanwhile, our patriot soldier, Anna Maria Lane, faced similar financial hardships after the Revolution, but soon received money from an unexpected source. As the war continued, Archibald Campbell, a British lieutenant just released from prison in Cambridge, captured Savannah, and when John was trying to retake it, he himself was made a prisoner. John was exchanged and re-enlisted in Virginia, so it is natural this is where we settled upon conclusion of the war. John served as a state guardsman, and I served the guard as a nurse. Normally, a married woman would not receive pay in this position, but the Revolution proved to me my services are valuable, so I refused to continue providing them unless I was paid. Eventually, Governor James Monroe himself authorized my receipt of wages for nursing, but the injury to my leg proved debilitating and I could no longer work. John himself, also crippled, was relieved from the state guard, and we were financially desperate, seeking assistance through injured pensions. John received a standard pension, but for performing extraordinary military services in the Revolutionary War, in the garb and with the courage of a soldier, I received a pension of my own. It was more than twice the standard male Revolutionary War pension, a triumph both as a soldier and as a woman capable of being a patriot. Upon conclusion of the American Revolution, American statesmen were left with a pressing question: how would the impacts of women like Lane and Murray be reflected in the new nation? Legal impacts were not immediately positive. Loyalists with sentiments such as Murray's often fled to Canada or Britain following the Revolution and had their colonial property confiscated by state governments. Massachusetts courts decided confiscation was not right because the married women were incapable of the property-related decision-making necessary to flee. Rather, they were just acting as extensions of their husband's wishes. In this sense, the impact of the 1805 Martin versus Massachusetts case was only of more tragedy for women and property. Social impacts were more readily felt as women assumed expanded public roles, from those like Lane, who were paid for nursing, to those like Elizabeth Murray, who controlled their husbands' businesses and estates in the men's absences. These social impacts translated into educational impacts, as statesmen, such as Benjamin Rush, began urging Americans to educate women specifically so they could administer property, which Murray championed for decades. This thinking facilitated the rise of the Republican motherhood, an education movement emphasizing the role of married women in teaching civic governmental virtues. Finally, social and educational impacts facilitated lasting political and economic change. The Republican motherhood continued to give women public roles leading into the 19th century, when the Seneca Falls Declaration stated all men and women are created equal with certain inalienable rights. Rights including life, liberty, and property. Within 50 years, most states had passed Married Women's Property Acts, which allowed married women to control property and wages, just as Lane and Murray began to 100 years earlier. Political and economic impacts have been felt as recently as 1974, when for the first time married women could sign for their own credit cards, and today when married women can serve an elected office. Looking back, Anna Maria Lane and Elizabeth Murray were undeniably divided by politics. The former was a staunch patriot who followed her husband to war when tragically shot at the Battle of Germantown, but triumphed in becoming the first Virginia woman to receive an injured pension. Elizabeth Murray was struck by tragedy when her business was confiscated. Her reputation was dismantled by the press, and she died unable to return home. But she triumphed in opposing the rebels by helping loyalist women start businesses of their own. What the two women never realized is that by standing on opposing sides of tragedy, they were working towards a collective triumph. The expanded female public roles which continue to impact the U.S. today. Thank you.